My name is Carol. I am 58 years old. That Mother's Day morning, my kitchen was filled with the scent of lemon and thyme from the chicken roasting in the oven, a recipe my own mother had taught me. Sunlight streamed through the window over the sink, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. I was polishing the good silver the set Robert and I received for our wedding when my gaze fell on the gallery wall of photographs in the hallway. There I was, 35 years ago, my face puffy and pale, cradling a newborn David against my hospital gown. A memory sharp as a splinter pierced the calm, the feeling of the stiff hospital sheets, the distant beep of machines, and a hollow, aching emptiness that flooded me the moment they placed that bundle in my arms. I shook my head as if to dislodge the thought. Nonsense. Just the nostalgia of an empty nester on a holiday. I turned back to the table, adjusting the placement of a fork, waiting for the sound of David's car in the driveway. Things had been cool between us for months, a slow frost settling over our weekly calls. I had baked his favorite peach cobbler, clinging to the hope that this day would thaw the silence. The doorbell chimed. David stood on the porch with a bouquet of daisies, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Julia was beside him, holding a store-bought pie. Our embraces were brief, a pat on the back. Lunch was a delicate dance of safe topics, the unseasonable warmth, a new restaurant downtown. Then, as I poured coffee, David cleared his throat. "We have your gift, Mom." He reached into the leather messenger bag at his feet and withdrew a standard business envelope, the kind that holds documents, not greetings. He extended it across the tablecloth. Julia suddenly became very interested in the pattern of the china. "What's this, honey?" I asked, my voice light, a flutter of unease in my chest. "Just open it," he said, his tone flat. I slid my finger under the flap. Inside was a small, sterile-looking kit with a company logo I recognized from television commercials. Beneath it, a sheaf of papers clipped together. My breath hitched. I looked from the kit to my son's face, and in his steely expression, I saw not my child, but a prosecutor. "You'll need to follow the instructions," he stated, "but read the report first. It's important." Before I pull out that report, before the life I knew unraveled right there at my dining room table, I want to take a moment with you. Where are you listening to this? In your kitchen making dinner, or maybe on a walk? I'd love if you'd tell me in the comments. And if you've ever faced a moment where a loved one's words changed everything, if you've ever held a smile while your heart was breaking, please tap that like button and subscribe. This story isn't just about a DNA test. It's about the architecture of a family built on a hidden fault line and what happens when the ground finally gives way. The papers felt heavy, official. The cover page bore the letterhead of Grantham and Associates Private Investigations. The language was dry forensic. It detailed an examination of birth records from County General Hospital. Yellow highlights marked the anomalies the listed attending physician, A. Dr. M. Rhodes, versus my recollection of a Dr. Evans. The recorded weight and length differed slightly from what was written in David's baby book in my own hand. A footnote referenced inconsistent nursing shift logs for the time period following the delivery. The summary paragraph was a clinical gut punch. The cumulative discrepancies, coupled with the client's self-reported lack of phenotypic alignment with the alleged parents, warrant further investigation to conclusively determine filiation. A direct-to-consumer genetic test is recommended. Alleged parents. The words buzzed in my head. A part of me, a deep, secret part I had walked past every day like a locked room, whispered. "You knew something was wrong." "Well?" David's voice was tight. Now you see. Now you see why I've always felt like an outsider. Look at us, Mom. Really look. Your hair is fair. Mine is dark. Your eyes are blue. Mine are brown. Dad was 6 feet tall. I've been 5'9" since I was 17. Nothing adds up. Julia sees it too. Julia nodded, her expression one of pained sympathy. "It's about clarity, Carol, for David's peace of mind." Peace of mind. I managed to say the report trembling in my hands. "You did this. You hired someone to dig into my past, into your past, like it's some corporate audit. To uncover the truth, you and Dad hid David's composure, cracked his voice, rising. Now. Do the test. Right now. I want to watch you swab your cheek. Prove to me that my entire life hasn't been a lie." The venom in his words, delivered on this day of all days, was paralyzing, but it also acted like a key turning in that long-locked door. Visions of the hospital swarmed me, The endless grinding labor, the fear in Robert's eyes as the monitor alarm sounded, the mask being placed over my face, waking up hours later in a blur of pain and disorientation. Robert, his face drawn and gray, leaning over the bed rail, gently arranging a tiny blanketed form beside me. "Meet your son," he'd murmured, but his voice had been thick with an emotion I couldn't then name. I'd looked at the baby's face, a surge of protective instinct washing over me, yet underneath a terrifying silent scream. This is not my child. I'd attributed it to the drugs, the trauma, the sheer overwhelm. Days later, an older nurse with gentle hands had been helping me to the bathroom. As I shuffled, she'd said softly, almost to herself, "He's a good size." "No unusual marks, then?" "No birthmarks, you noticed." The question had felt odd, specific. I'd been too sore, too consumed with the exhausting mechanics of new motherhood to process it. I'd buried the unease layer by layer under lullabies and diaper changes, telling myself it was the baby blues. Now, facing David's impatient glare, that buried feeling erupted with the force of decades. It wasn't uncertainty. It was a dreadful, quiet knowing. I placed the investigator's report on the table, smoothing the pages with a calm I did not feel. I looked at my son, at the man awaiting my collapse, and a profound, eerie stillness settled in my core. "David," I said, and my voice was remarkably even. There are details about that night that no investigator, no piece of paper could ever find. David let out a sharp, dismissive breath. "Here we go. The emotional appeal. Save it, Mom. I don't want a story. I want data. I want science." "This is the data," I replied, drawing a slow, steadying breath. "It's just not the kind that fits in a lab report." About a decade ago, I saw Dr. Evans, my real doctor, at a library fundraiser. He was frail, using a cane. He saw me across the room, and his whole demeanor, it just folded. He asked if we could speak in the courtyard. I painted the scene for him, the cool evening air, the distant hum of traffic, the way Dr. Evans's knuckles were white where he gripped his cane. He told me he'd spent 25 years seeing my face in his dreams. He said a burden named Carol Jensen had followed him into retirement. I recounted the tale as he'd sobbed it to me. A fierce summer thunderstorm that night, a lightning strike that caused a brief but total power failure in the maternity ward. 2 healthy baby boys born within 40 minutes mine, and that of a young woman named Teresa who had listed no next of kin. 2 men in the dim, generator-lit waiting room. Robert, sick with worry for me and Teresa's boyfriend. A frightened young man named Leo who kept pacing by the vending machines. In the confusion of shadows and emergency lighting, a nurse, new and flustered, directed the fathers to the wrong bassinets. Robert, trusting and distracted, took the baby handed to him and came to my bedside. Leo, seeing a man take a baby, assumed the remaining one was his, snatched him up and fled into the stormy night. By the time the shift change happened and the error was discovered, Leo and the infant were long gone. The hospital director, a man more concerned with liability than lives, made a call. They took Robert into a stark office. They told him the baby he held was his. They told him I had hemorrhaged, that my heart was weak, that the shock of learning her biological son was missing could literally kill me. They appealed to his love, to his duty as a husband. They framed silence as the ultimate protection. My Robert, a man who built his life on honesty, was presented with a catastrophic choice. To save his wife, he buried his son. He chose the child in his arms and carried the ghost of another for the rest of his life. When Dr. Evans finished, I told David, my eyes holding his unblinking gaze, he pressed 2 things into my hand. A faded Polaroid from the hospital files of a newborn girl with a thatch of black hair, my daughter, and a slip of paper with a name and a phone number. Teresa. He had carried his guilt to her doorstep years prior and confessed. She had kept the secret too for her child's sake. I contacted Teresa. I continued the memory of our first conversation in a quiet park, vivid and raw. We met on a bench. We didn't speak for the first 10 minutes. We just cried. Her daughter Maya was raised by Leo, who she eventually married. He died in a worksite accident when Maya was 15, his secret intact. Teresa and I made a solemn agreement. We would not detonate your lives or Maya's to ease our own conscience. We decided the children we had rocked to sleep, whose knees we had bandaged, were ours. Love had made it irrevocably so. I made a conscious decision, David. Every morning for the past 10 years, I have woken up and chosen to be your mother with the full, painful knowledge of the truth. I let the words hang in the air between us, heavy and final. So you see the secret you're trying to expose. I've been living with it. I've been living with it and choosing you every single day. David stared at me for a long beat, his face a mask of cold disbelief. Then a humorless smirk twisted his lips. That's an Academy Award performance. Really? You should be on stage, but a performance doesn't alter biology. You are not my biological mother. It was Julia who leaned forward, then her voice a model of reasonable concern. Carol, we hear you. We do. And David's feelings of dislocation are very real, but they have tangible implications. She exchanged a glance with David, who gave a slight, imperceptible nod. We've had some financial setbacks. David's partnership didn't work out. This house, this neighborhood. The equity here is substantial. The inheritance. If there are any legal challenges to David's status as a direct heir, it could be tied up in probate for years. We were hoping we could handle this like adults. If you were to formally acknowledge the situation, perhaps execute a quitclaim deed on the house or discuss a significant inter vivos gift, it would demonstrate your understanding. It would help compensate for the foundational deception. The room seemed to contract, the air turning thin. This was the nucleus of the bomb. Not a quest for identity, but a calculated play for assets. The son I had loved and nurtured viewed me as a financial instrument. The pain was so profound it crystallized into something else, a clear, cold fury. I pushed my chair back and stood. The floor felt solid beneath my feet. I looked at David, and the last vestige of the little boy I knew vanished, replaced by the calculating stranger before me. You want to talk about what's tangible? My voice was low, but it vibrated with an intensity that made Julia flinch. Let's talk about the tangible reality of holding your hair back while you had the stomach flu at 9 years old. The tangible reality of sitting in a high school parking lot until midnight because you missed your curfew and I was too worried to sleep. The tangible reality of taking a second job so you could have the class ring you wanted, the one your father's insurance money wouldn't stretch to cover. Those are tangible, David. DNA is a chemical instruction manual. Motherhood is the life built from those instructions, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. I built that life for you, for 35 years. I turned my gaze to Julia. And you speak of handling things like adults. You orchestrate this ambush in my home on Mother's Day and call it being an adult. I looked back at my son, feeling a final, decisive snap inside. You ask what can compensate for the deception. The only deception was from a hospital administration and from a man trying to protect his wife. There was no deception from me. There was a conscious daily choice. A choice Teresa made. A choice your father made. To give you a stable, loving life. And yes, I have met Maya. I know the daughter I carried. And I have chosen every day since learning of her not to shatter her world, because real love isn't about claiming ownership. It's about honoring a person's peace, a concept that seems utterly foreign to you both right now. I walked to the French doors leading to the garden, my back to them, my hands clasped tightly. Take the test, David. Go ahead. It will give you the certificate of disconnection you seem to crave. But it will never give you back the mother you are so carelessly discarding. And it will not alter the fact that my name and your father's are the only ones on the deed to this house or to the history it contains. The emptiness after their car pulled away was a physical presence. I did not shed a tear. I felt galvanized purpose flowing into the spaces where hurt had been. The next morning, I called the law firm of Henderson and Lowe. I met with a steely-eyed attorney named Elaine Mercer. In her minimalist office, I was lucid and direct. I need to restructure my estate. I wish to establish a charitable trust, the Carol and Robert Jensen Pathways Fund, to provide scholarships and mentorship for young adults aging out of the foster care system. The primary asset funding, it will be my house. A separate fixed sum, 10% of the total estate value, is to be left to my son David. The remainder flows into the trust. Elaine typed her fingers swift. And if he contests based on undue influence or questions of familial relationship, he has already created the documentation questioning that relationship, I stated calmly. The trust is ironclad. I want it that way. My next call was to Teresa. I told her everything. She listened and then sighed, a sound of deep sadness. The avarice. I'm so sorry, Carol. Leo had his flaws, but he was never cruel, not like this. Teresa, I have a request. I would like permission to meet Maya, not as a secret, not to make up for lost time, simply to know her, as a person, if she is open to it. There was a long pause. She's 27. She's known the broad strokes for a while now. She's a kind soul, a photographer. I think she would be open to it, Carol. I'll talk to her. Then I climbed the pull-down stairs to the attic. The air was thick with the smell of cedar and old paper. I found the trunk marked David's Firsts. I sat on the dusty floorboards and opened it. The tiny bronze baby shoes, the framed lock of soft hair, the construction paper cards with crayon hearts. I didn't weep. I felt a solemn, almost archaeological reverence for the story these objects told. I packed each item with care into a new, neutral plastic bin. If he wanted to rewrite our history, he could have the original documents. When David called 3 days later, his tone was conciliatory, layered with a false warmth. Mom, listen, I was out of line. We were both stressed. But we're family. We need to figure out a path forward that works for everyone legally and financially. I interrupted him. David, I've engaged an estate attorney. My will has been changed. The house will be sold to fund a scholarship trust in mine and your father's memory. You will receive a defined cash inheritance, a smaller portion. The silence was stunned, then erupted. You can't do that. That's my inheritance. Dad would be rolling in his grave. Your father? I said, my voice quiet with finality, spent his life trying to protect me from pain. Now, I am protecting myself. I will always love the child you were, but I will not be financially blackmailed by the man you've become. You clearly need space to figure out what matters to you, and I need space to heal from what you've done. I placed the receiver down. My hand did not shake. Recovery did not arrive like a sunrise. It seeped in like dawn's early light, gradual and gray. A woman from my book club mentioned a therapist who ran a group for non-death loss. I went feeling like an imposter. The circle included a woman whose husband had advanced dementia, a man whose brother was declared missing, a mother whose child had joined a cult. They spoke of grieving someone who was still alive, of the peculiar agony of ambiguous absence. When I finally found my voice and shared my story, the switch, the decades of unknowing, the brutal confrontation, no one looked shocked. A man simply said, "You loved him in the trenches. That's the love that counts." Their collective understanding was a sanctuary. A few weeks later, I was sitting opposite Maya in a sun-drenched art gallery cafe. She had Robert's exact smile, the one that started in his eyes. She was quiet, observant. We were both navigating uncharted territory. I appreciate you being willing to meet, I began. I appreciate you giving me time, she replied. She told me her mother had shared the full story after Maya's own engagement, wanting no secrets going into a marriage. She spoke of Leo, the man she called Dad, with a fond but complex affection. He was always a little guarded, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It makes a tragic kind of sense now. We talked for almost 3 hours, not about genetics or betrayal, but about her freelance photography projects, her fear of flying, my attempts to learn watercolor, painting my favorite novels. The connection wasn't a deafening roar of recognition. It was the quiet hum of a familiar tune heard from another room. We exchanged emails. We made plans to visit a photography exhibit the following month. No expectations, no labels. I also purchased a simple lined notebook. I began to write unsent letters to Robert. You let me love a child I didn't bear while our own was a stranger. I wrote anger flowing from the pen. Pages later, I wrote, I see the prison of love you were in. I forgive you for choosing my life over the truth. Finally, I wrote, thank you for the gift of a son to raise. Thank you for the family we nurtured, even if its roots were planted in someone else's soil. With each sentence, a chain fell away. I began the deliberate work of rehoming my own space. I didn't just clean, I edited. I took down half the photos of David, storing them carefully. I left up landscapes, pictures of my parents, of Robert and me on our wedding day. I was creating a home for the woman I was now, not just a museum for the mother I had been. Another year turned. Another Mother's Day approached. I was not in my house. I was in a rustic cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains with my sister Beverly. We drank coffee on the porch, watching mist rise from the valley below. A notification chimed on my phone, an electronic message from David. It was not a card, it was a digital image of a single bare oak tree in winter. The text below read, "I am sorry," and "Thank you." I did the test. Attached was a file, the results from the testing company, a table with a stark, definitive result: shared DNA, 0%. Conclusion: no biological relationship. He had finally obtained the empirical evidence he demanded. His apology was spare, almost transactional. The thank you was enigmatic, but I chose to see it as a grudging acknowledgement of the childhood he had been given, even if he could not yet express it to me directly. Beverly read over my shoulder and wrapped an arm around me. "His path is his own now, Carol. You've done your walking." Back home, a realtor's lockbox hung on the front door. The house was too full of layered echoes, laughter, and now the echo of that terrible silence. I had rented a modern loft apartment downtown with huge north-facing windows and no memories, and I had started volunteering as a reading tutor for adults at the literacy center. The determined focus in a young man's eyes as he sounded out a word, the proud smile of a woman reading a newspaper for the first time, it filled a chamber of my soul that had felt hollow. I was actively constructing a life piece by chosen piece. Now I sit on a bench in the pocket park near my new apartment. The evening is soft. I watch an older couple slowly walk a small dog, their steps in sync. I contemplate the journey. I learned that motherhood is not a state of being, but a series of actions. It is the doing, the tending, the choosing, especially when the choice is hard. It is a love built in the present tense. I learned that a hidden truth can feel like a fault line, but when the quake comes, you discover you are not the fragile china on the shelf. You are the ground itself. You can reshape the landscape. I learned that forgiveness is not an exoneration of the other person. It is the deliberate release of the debt you were carrying for them. It is setting down the heavy suitcase of anger so you can walk freely. I forgave Robert for his impossible love-driven choice. I forgave David for the hurt he caused, born of his own unmoored confusion. And most critically, I forgave myself for the subconscious knowing I ignored for the years I spent trying to force a puzzle piece to fit for believing my worth as a mother was tied to a biological claim. Family. I see now as not merely an inheritance. It is an ongoing creation. Some members are gifted to you. Some you discover along the way. Some leave the project. Others arrive when you least expect it. The blueprint is always changing. So I want to ask you, listening to my voice, what is the foundation of your family? Is it the unchanging facts of biology, or is it the ever-changing chosen acts of commitment, loyalty, and care? I genuinely want to hear your perspective. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it connected with a chapter of your own life, please press that like button. It helps these narratives of real-life courage reach others who might need them. Subscribe to this channel for more conversations about rebuilding, healing, and finding authenticity after life's earthquakes. And if you know someone wrestling with a fractured family bond, someone who needs to hear that peace is possible on the other side of pain, please share this video with them. Thank you. Thank you for your time, for your attention, for being part of this community where we can speak our truths. However your family is composed, I wish you strength in its bonds and the serenity that comes from building a life anchored in your own truth. Be kind to yourselves.